Well, I want to start by thanking everyone for joining us right now. I want to acknowledge the Holstee members that are in the crowd right now, because it's because of you that we're able to host programs like this. So a quick shout out to you. If you're out there, kind of give a little wave. I want to acknowledge all the Holstee members that are out there. Thank you guys. We really appreciate that, your continued support and patronage and being part of the community and helping Holstee become what it can be. For those who aren't familiar, as a member, you get access to the monthly guides that we create each month, which pull together some of the greatest thinkers on topics like creativity, resilience, and this month, which is passion. And you can learn more about that at holstee.com. Our upcoming event is going to be on September 8th, and that's with Kim Forrester. And the topic is tuning into your sixth sense, something we haven't really covered much at Holstee, but we're curious to kind of explore more. And now it's with great pleasure that I get to introduce Marianne. I want to say that I first started going down the Cup of Empathy rabbit hole about 2 years ago. And it was literally the first video I saw, I think, was your video of the summary of the NVC steps. And then you did a really good job of linking to other scenarios. She did a really great job of linking to all these different use cases for NVC, of using NVC with your kids, using NVC in a relationship. There's some really just, I don't know, it just felt very real to me, all the use cases. And there was even one episode that was about how to not annoy people by using NVC, and like, all the common tropes that you might fall into using NVC, and to not sound robotic and really make it your own. And so it just struck me as this is someone who has thought about nonviolent communication from a very real and practical standpoint. And about a couple months ago, when we started to think about hosting events, Marianne was at the top of the list for us, and I had no idea if she'd be open for it. She kind of seemed like a YouTube superstar off in the distance, and we emailed and she got back in touch, and I felt so excited and grateful that she was down to talk more and that we're actually here having this event. It's kind of surreal. So if you don't know her, Marianne is a Dutch conflict mediator and trainer of nonviolent communication, and she runs YouTube's biggest channel on the topic of nonviolent communication. And so I'm going to hand it over to her, and we're going to have, I'm very excited for this session. So thank you guys all for joining. Thank you, Marianne. Feel free to take it away. And you may need to unmute.
And I may need to unmute. Yeah, thank you so much. YouTube superstar. I hadn't heard that one. Makes me feel a bit shy. Yeah, thank you everyone for joining. I'm so happy to see so many new faces, very exciting. So yeah, just to further introduce myself a little bit, I learned about NVC about 5 years ago. And what it does for me is that I did a lot of mindfulness and therapy and all these kinds of things, but NVC was for me really this practical way of how to talk to people, how to resolve conflicts, how to say no in a way that is connecting. So it covered for me so many things that I hadn't learned yet. And for me back then, I was suffering a lot from depressions, and somehow I didn't think at all that this would help for that, but it was really resolving that. And then I was like, wow, I need to really teach this to people. So that's how I got into it, and why I'm really motivated to teach it to others. So the word nonviolent communication, I don't know what is you guys, your association with that, but for me it was a bit like, what's that? I'm not violent. Is it just about being nice or something? And also the word communication, it says it's just about communication, about talking to other people, right? But NVC is also really about how you talk to yourself. So in that sense, I don't really love the term. It's what you need to Google if you want to find out more. And the person that invented NVC named Marshall Rosenberg. He was an American psychiatrist. That's what he named it, right? But I prefer the term connecting communication. That's more what it is for me, the whole goal of NVC. So NVC is the short term for nonviolent communication. The whole goal is to find connection with other people and yourself. So those two things. And so I'm going to try to cover the basics today. I just want to say that it's a very short time to do that. So let's dive into that. You're going to get the tip of the iceberg. And if you want to learn more, there's lots of videos out there. So So first of all, I mean, we're going to talk about conflict today, right? And so what do I even mean by conflict? Because actually NVC has a very broad definition. So conflict is, in my definition, is that one person wants A and the other person wants B, and those two things are clashing. So that's a very simple, so it doesn't necessarily have to be a fight. That would be like the next step, but just me wanting to do yoga and I don't know, with my friend, and my friend wants to stay at home and read a book. That's a conflict. So how do we navigate that? And a lot of times we're a bit scared in that situation, because in the past we've maybe seen that when that happens, there's distance, or there is a fight indeed, or you try to talk it out, but it doesn't really get fully resolved. So that's why most of us want to, or a lot of us want to avoid conflict. And then at some point things explode or get complicated, or we're like, I don't want to hang out with this person anymore. So that's my definition of conflict. And so the main principle of NVC, there's 4 steps, but we're going to cover 2 of them. And the main one is actually step 3. So we're going to sort of skip step 1 and 2, but it's going to work out fine, no worries. But the main step is to go from judgments and strategies to feelings and needs. So I'll just repeat that because we don't have the slide. So it's from judgments and strategies to feelings and needs. And the way NVC uses those terms is in a very specific way. So I'm just going to explain what it means by going through an example. So let's first look at the strategies. Why do we need to go from strategies to feelings and needs? So, for example, at some point I came home from a presentation. I was really tired. I came home, and my partner, he wanted to watch some videos with me. He was like, oh, I've got these super funny videos, you have to see them. And I was like, I want to be in my bed in silence with the sheets over my head. I'm full. So in NVC language, those two things that we wanted are strategies. So that's important to keep in mind when I continue. So he wanted to watch videos, I wanted to be in bed in silence. That's clashing. And in daily life, we mostly talk in strategies, or a lot at least. And it's on the level of strategies that conflict takes place. So that's important to keep in mind. If you're in a conflict, you can think, oh, maybe I'm probably on the level of strategies. I hope that makes sense. Please ask me questions in the chat. I will definitely at the end check in with Sarah and Michael to see, you know, if I can answer. And if there's something urgent, to do it in between. So we know what strategies. So when you talk in strategies, it's kind of like A or B. It's I'm going to get what I want, or my partner is going to get what they want. And it's kind of painful. It's not really joyful. It's why we don't like a conflict. And so NVC is asking, well, how to get to option C that we both like. And option C is not a little bit of A and a little bit of B. Does anyone have an idea of what we call that when we do like a little bit of A, a little bit of B? I'm curious to hear.
Is it compromise?
Exactly. Thank you. Yes. And so I'm not saying don't ever do compromise, but it's not ideal. Like especially if you're in a long-term relationship with someone, compromise means we're both doing a little bit of what we don't want. And so as a result, there can be resentment building up. And so in my experience, especially when I'm mediating between people, I really want to check that no one is doing a compromise. So we don't want to do that. So what, right? Then what are we doing? So what we need to do is to move to the level of feelings and needs. I'm going to focus on needs today, just to keep it simple. And I think you all got a sheet. And if you don't, I think Sarah can post a link, because needs, you know, in daily life, we use the word needs, and it's like, I need coffee or something. But I guess you know now that coffee is a strategy, right? It's a concrete thing that I want that can clash with someone else. No, you shouldn't drink coffee. Coffee's bad for you, right? So that can clash. So needs in NVC are abstract and universal. So universal meaning that, so for example, a need could be the need for appreciation. And so no matter what, you know, cultural background, gender, you know, no matter who you are, at certain points in your life, you need appreciation. And so there's also the need for freedom, the need for connection, the need for basic needs like the need for physical touch. So to make it easy, I created a list so we can sort of like tune into that language. And because those needs are universal, it's easier to find connection, because someone might not understand why I like coffee. It's just a stupid example, but someone might understand that it gives me comfort. That there's something very comforting about coffee. And maybe they have another type of food that gives comfort to them, right? So that's how I find connection. And so we're going to practice this in a bit, by the way, but so you don't need the sheet right now, but maybe you can have a look at what I mean by needs. And so to go back to the example with me and my partner, we were curious, like what are our needs actually? And so maybe you can actually guess, if you like what could be the need of my partner wanting to share videos with me, and what was my need wanting to be in bed, sheets over my head in silence, and try to think abstract. So we want to hear something abstract. Let's see if you get the idea. And by the way, guessing someone's needs is also a way to find connection. Like if you're triggered by someone and not connecting, trying to guess what it is that they need is a way to actually make you as the receiver less triggered. So, and don't be afraid to correct the wrong thing, because people usually will correct you. Let me see. I see connection versus recharging. Yes, thank you. Recharge versus share experience. Yes. Let me see one more, maybe just to see if you get the picture. Rest versus play. Okay. Yes, thank you. Yeah, so needing comfort versus connection. Okay, yeah. So the words that we used was, my partner said he needed contact, and I was resonating with the word rest. So you can see like a lot of the words that you were guessing were in the area, right? And I've noticed that for people to really connect with someone, oftentimes there's one specific word that they like, and they will tell you like what's the exact word that sort of resonates with their body. So, okay, so we had the needs. We had the need for contact and rest. But because at that point we're at this abstract level, it's hard to know what to do, right? Okay, contact and rest. Now what? And so the next step, and that is, so this was step 3 of the 4 steps. So the next step, which is step 4, is to actually brainstorm concrete ways to meet all of the needs that are there. So this could be between 2 people, but if you're with a whole group and you want to figure out what to do, maybe you have a set of needs. And so if you are on the level of needs, usually you already also feel a bit more heard if the other person knows your needs. So there can be this sort of relaxation that is needed for the creativity of step 4. So if you notice you don't have the creativity, it's good to check like, maybe I'm still in my head a bit on a strategy level, because I'm so attached to wanting to be right about coffee, or to want to show you those videos. I'm a bit attached to that. So ideally you feel a sense of relaxation and a sense of trust that your needs will be met, which is something that needs time to build that trust. But that's a whole that's maybe a bit of a different story, but yeah. So we were brainstorming. Step 4, brainstorming a new strategy. So that's the C. I was saying like we have A and B, right? And they're clashing. And this is the C that we want to get to. And so my partner said, well, how about I give you a massage? Because then I have my need for contact and you have your need for rest. So can you see how that meets both of those needs, and how that way you can sort of, get out of this clash? And so I want to ask you to have a little practice with this, and let's see how far you can get. And so I want to ask you to to get your needs sheet. There's also a feelings list. You don't need that right now, just a list of needs. And then think of a situation where someone said something or did something that you didn't like, and pick something small. So preferably not the biggest trauma in your life, but also maybe not something with a partner or your parents or children. Those people are so important for us that it can be a bit difficult to work through here in a short time. You're going to do this for yourself, by the way, so no worries about the privacy. But I recommend to pick like a really small event where you felt a little pinch. And then ask yourself, what was my need in that moment? Which need was not met by what this person did or said? And so I'm going to give you, let's say, something like 3 to 5 minutes. I will check in with you and see how you're doing and if you need more time. So think of a small situation and check the needs list. And when you're checking, it can also be helpful to see what your eyes are drawn to, because in a way, all those needs look really nice. Like, oh, of course, I want all of these needs. But see what your body and your eyes are kind of like drawn to. You could feel touched even by something, or you could feel like, oh, I don't need to look any further. So try to observe your body, because it often has this wisdom of what you actually needed. So yeah, I'll put a little clock and I'll check in with you. So if you have a question while you're doing this, you can write in the chat as well, and I can help you. So I got 2 questions that I would like to answer, but first I want to just ask, how was it to do this? Especially if this was your first time, maybe you already did it before, but how did it feel to find the need? If you'd like to say something about that. Because this is actually, NVC has 3 pillars, as they say, and one is to express yourself to someone else. The other one is to listen to someone else, and the other one is to connect with yourself. So this is actually what we were connecting, doing the self-connection part. And man, that was really helpful. Okay, in what way? Like, did it give you more understanding for yourself, or like some hope that you could find connection with this person? Or can you say a few more words? Anyone for whom it was maybe challenging or?
Yes, can you go over the 4 empathy need steps you mentioned to select a need from the empathy list? You also refer to the emotions under the different titles, and then to brainstorm actions to meet those needs. But what was the first one?
You mean the 4 NVC steps? You would like me to mention them?
Yes, please.
Yes. Okay. So the first one is to make an observation, which just means that, if someone said something to me that was hurtful, my observation can be, you said your hair looks terrible today. That could be the observation. So that's what happened without my feelings about it, my thoughts about it, just a very neutral description to announce. And there's a lot to that, but that's why I didn't get into that today, but that's the first step. And the second step is the feeling, to share the feeling. So yeah, I had a pinch in my stomach, or I was angry, or I am angry. Like, that's the feeling. And then there's the need. So that's what we did look into today, and what's called the request. So request could be, yeah, could you say something nice about how I look right now? Because I kind of need a bit of appreciation, for example, or a bit of reassurance that I look okay. So those are the 4 steps. Does that help?
Okay, so I have a need. So I have an example. Do you have time to talk about it, or do you have something else?
Let me see. I think if we can keep it brief, because you have a question.
Yeah, so basically my need is love and attention. And the 2 words that came from that is appreciation and respect, which were the feelings. And the situation that occurred, the observation that I had is I paid for my boyfriend's birthday party, and I did not feel that he appreciated or respected what I did for him. And my need was love and attention. So from that example, what do I need to do now?
Yeah, so there's many options. But if you choose to talk with him, you have the option to express and to say, maybe if right now you still have a request to him. So maybe you'd like to hear some appreciation from him.
Right.
It could also be that you want to listen to him first and kind of hear like, actually, I want to understand like what was going on in you. So those are two options.
Okay, that's wonderful. Thank you. And another question as a follow-up is, sometimes I communicate my needs through email and text. Is that the best way?
Can I interrupt you for a second? Is it
Sure.
okay? Because we have many different people and many different questions, but I
No
try to
problem.
have one question per person for now, at least. Yeah.
Yes,
Maybe at the
that's
end
fine.
we have more time. Okay, thank you. All right. So let me look at the chats. I think actually, because we have such a big group, I want to focus on the chat so I can really keep it brief. Let me see. Rishab was saying, yeah, you wonder if NVC ever feels like work. Is it that you wonder if this can ever become as sort of relaxing and natural and spontaneous as, let's say, everyday language? I wonder.
Yeah, I just wonder if it does it, and as someone, as you've practiced NVC, I'm assuming, so does it feel like work? Does it feel like you have to work at this, or does it feel like, and for both people involved, in a relationship, for example, does it feel like you have to work at this, or does it feel like much easier than that? Just curious.
Yeah, so my own experience and that of my students, I see that it is a new skill that you need to practice. So yeah, if you call that work or not, it depends maybe a little bit on how easy it comes for you. For me, it felt intuitive. And then there's the aspect that sometimes I might not have the space to really go, in this example of my partner, I could also think, I don't have the space to listen and find your need. I just want to, go to bed, and that's fine too. So that's something that I really emphasize, that, you don't always have to go in the listening mode, which is something that a lot of people tend to do. A lot of people that are interested in NVC are quite naturally often quite empathic. And so I kind of warn for that, not to not make it work, actually, to not make it into something that drains your energy, because then you're not a good listener anyway. So that's what I would say, that's very important. Hope that helps.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah.
Tuk An is saying, sometimes when I voice a need, I get the feedback that it's too abstract and I'd like to brainstorm about a more specific request, but the other person is already agitated that I did not communicate specifically enough. Okay. So I guess you're wondering what to do with that. So I wonder if you tried, or if you could try to say that out loud, to say, my need is, I have this need for choice, and I don't know yet right now, like how to get there concretely. Are you open to brainstorming with me? Or, if you say they're agitated, I'm kind of curious, but it's, we need more time maybe with that person to figure out, why are they agitated? But, if they're a bit impatient, you could say, is it okay if I, if I retreat myself and get back to you in an hour with the concrete idea? So either to take the time yourself, if they're very impatient, or to ask, to kind of collaborate with them, like, hey, can we look at my need together, and maybe include your need as well, and see if we can brainstorm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, in the I don't want to go into the example right now because I think it would take too much time. But I think that sometimes when I would say like, hey, I want to be seen, or I have the need to be seen and heard, then when the person is already really agitated or like impatient or frustrated, then they would say, what do you mean by that? I don't know what that means. I guess like they want to hear the exact strategy that they can follow up.
Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes I also don't know. I just feel like something's not right and I have an unfulfilled need, but I also don't know like I don't know what strategy to tell them. Yeah, so I find that really difficult. But yeah, one way definitely is to say, okay, if you're not open to brainstorm right now because you're already frustrated, then let me try to think about something that could help me, and then I'll get back to you.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense to me. I think a lot of people can relate that you don't always know like right away what is the concrete way. And that's also something, it's also a practice, and I can recommend to do this practice with yourself regularly, like to take the need list and to find different strategies for yourself, like even daily, to take a small situation, and then it will also become more, you might become a bit more quick, let's say, in finding.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. Thank you so much.
Let me see. I see some people sharing what it was like. It's kind of hidden, the need. Yes, absolutely. This is a language that we're not used to. So I'm glad you noticed that. More connection. I see another question, Colleen. Is there ever a time that a person is not actually having a need met? For example, when trying to connect with my daughter and she's scrolling through Snapchat or Instagram, I honestly think that scrolling like that is not meeting any need. But is that just me being judgmental? I love this question because it's a good, I think after this, I'm going to go to the last part I want to cover, because it's actually about judgment. There is always a need. So no matter how ugly, let's say, people can be violent, right? There's always a need behind it, even though the strategy might be very painful or causing a lot of trouble, or you might really not connect with it yourself, right? So when someone is scrolling through Snapchat or Instagram, it could be that they want relaxation, or let me think what it is for me when I'm on when I'm on TikTok. It could be fun, just a need for fun. Or even like if someone is a bit agitated or like needs to kind of wind down from being in school or something. Yeah, again, it could be relaxation and maybe even a sense of safety. It's very much comfort zone, right? So those are just a few guesses that I have. But if you have a judgment about it, it might be good to actually look at that first. Then it's easier to be open to someone having a beautiful need, let's say, behind their strategy. Yeah, so let me go to the last point I want to explain to you, and then let's see how much time we have left for the questions that I still see. Because the last point is important, because it is about, I was giving this example of me and my partner where we were not triggered. We were not really judging each other's strategy, but quite often we do, right? So let's imagine that we did. Let's imagine that, he wants to share videos with me, and I'm like, oh, he's always behind his screen. It's like, he's so passive, so then I'm judging. And maybe he would think like, oh, she's such an autist. She always wants to be alone. Or she's, what other judgment? Like she's a total hermit. She's not social, something like that. So that makes it a little bit more complicated, right? But so even in that case, behind my judgment towards someone is a need. So when I think, oh, he's always behind his screen, maybe I actually, what could it be like? Or if I think he's always passive, maybe I have a need for inspiration. Like I want to surround myself with people that inspiring me. And when he's behind the screen, for me, that's not very inspiring, right? Or when he tells me this thing about, or when he thinks in his head even, like, oh, she's an artist, she always wants to, she's not social. Could be that he feels actually a bit insecure that I'm not as much in contact with him as he wants to be in contact with me. So maybe he just needs reassurance of my love for him, right? So it can go quite deep. So we need to be sometimes a bit vulnerable to find it. So the part about the judgment is important to take into account, and to always to see that as something that there's a need behind as well. And when we talk in judgments, obviously that's not very connecting, right? So if we think about the goal of connection, and even with ourselves, like when we're in judging mode, it's harder to connect with ourselves. Like, what is it that we're really feeling and needing? And so I wanted to give that as a last part of, like, if you get stuck with the strategies and finding the need, it could be that there's some judgment or some shoulds, you shouldn't drink coffee, you shouldn't be behind your laptop, whatever it is. And sometimes we find it hard to admit that we have judgments, because there is a general societal judgment that judgments are bad, right? So we're judging the judgment, which is a bit tragic. So I hope that makes sense. And this is, again, of course, this is a topic that I could, write a book about. It's a big thing, but it's, yeah, just to give you a bit of a tip of the iceberg. Okay, so we have a bit of time still for the questions. Maria is saying, is it effective to use NVC on text or email? Does it work the same? Sometimes that's the only communication because they're avoiding. Yes, you can totally use this on email. Yes, actually, in the beginning, I practiced a lot by applying this via email, because then I actually, this question before of like, I don't know right away what I'm needing or what I want to request. So email actually gives you time to think about how to write it and how to say it. And when they reply and they say something that you're judging, you have some time to get back to yourself. And so I find it actually very helpful. Yeah, let me know if that answers your question. What were the 3 expressions again? Oh, yeah. So the 3 modes, I call them the 3 modes of NVC. It's expressing, it's listening, and self-connection. So those are the 3. And whatever situation we're in, we can choose between those 3. There's a choice. So we don't have to listen. We can also express. Michelle saying, this exercise helped me understand myself by recognizing the underlying need. When I get frustrated that family members don't put things away or close cabinet doors, I now realize that I need order. Great. This actually helped me feel better about myself. Yes, I'm glad that you noticed that, because compassion and empathy are key terms in my business is called Cup of Empathy. So it's really like, it's about that, finding that compassion for someone else and for yourself. So great. Rachel, I wonder if part of the challenge around communication is that one or both persons go directly into problem solving mode. Yeah, but NVC is more about slowing the conversation down for both persons to listen and share feelings, needs first. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for noticing that. Yeah. We try to, and the reason we do that's important to stopping to do that, to know why we do that. It's often that we're uncomfortable with unpleasant feelings, especially when we see that in the other. When someone is upset or angry or sad, we think, oh, I caused this, right? Which is not true. We don't cause other people's feelings. We can trigger them, but they have something, there is something touched in them that is in them. And so to slow down and to, wait a second, because now I'm saying so many things at the same time. Yeah, so what we do then is, like, we see those feelings and we're like, oh my God, I have to fix this. I have to get rid of this. So we say, don't cry. That's what we say to children sometimes, like, don't cry. Or why are you angry? And saying why, it's not like we want to hear why someone's angry. We actually are saying, like, I'm uncomfortable with you being angry. So So one important aspect of NVC is getting comfortable with unpleasant feelings, which is something that, you know, most of us didn't learn in school, even though I see it as one of the basic skills that you can have in life, right? To be comfortable with unpleasant feelings of yourself or someone else. If you can do that, it changes your life. So that's, and in connecting with someone, it's super helpful to be able to say, okay, you're upset, you're angry. Let's have a look at that. And, but yeah, not easy necessarily. Let me see. And actually, yeah, one of the phrases I sometimes use is like, hey, I'd like to slow down and see, you know, see if we can get both of our needs met. It can be a nice way to shift from, you know, a triggered mode with someone to actually, this is my intention. I'd like to slow down and see if we can find a way to get both our needs met, to get all needs met. Would you like to do that? You know, to invite also, to give someone choice in that as well. Would you like to do that? Eliana is saying, if we always have needs, would it be better for each one of us to try to solve them and not try to get someone else to solve it? Yeah, so wait, let me. So I talked about, so step 4 is kind of like the, sorry, I'm still recovering from COVID a bit. So actually I have some cough syrup that I'll take. It will help me. Yeah, so step 4, in which we're making it concrete, right? And are solving the need. I call it meeting the needs. And you're saying, Eliana, isn't it better if I always meet my own needs? And there's 2 things I want to say about that. One is like, yes, it's super helpful if you have the flexibility to see that you can also meet your own needs. And so our needs can be met by ourselves, by the person we're triggered by, maybe in a situation, or by someone else. So say that our need is like to be heard, then I can, you know, maybe ideally I want to be heard by this person that triggered me, but maybe they're not available. So maybe I can be heard by another person, option 2. If that doesn't work, maybe I can be heard by myself. And sometimes that requires a bit more creativity, like what does that look like? And maybe I'm going to write something and read it to myself, or maybe I'm going to speak a voice message as if I'm talking to that person. So yes, it's great if you have the flexibility to see those 3 options, yourself, the person that triggered you, and someone else. So there's actually 3 options in NVC for that. But I see something in society that worries me, which is that there's this attitude of like, you have to love yourself first. You have to be able to meet all your own needs. And the way I see it is that we're wired to be social beings that need each other, that we're not necessarily dependent. That sounds right, because we have this option of meeting our own needs, but we're interdependent. So in the end, I can't do without other people. And so I also want to stimulate people to actually ask more to other people to meet their needs in these concrete ways that makes it easier for people to meet your needs. So I see actually more, I stimulate people more often to actually ask for more, and people can say no, right? And then you can still meet it yourself. But that's, yeah, let me know how that is to hear. Let me see. Colleen is saying our values are a key part of our feelings. Yes, I agree. Don't know if you had a question about that. Heather saying, I have introduced the NVC framework to the teachers and staff at my school. Great, as a practice to use and teach students. What suggestions, examples do you have for teaching and practicing with children? It's a lot to answer, but I have actually on my website, I have feelings and needs list for kids, because kids totally get this, because they're way more connected with their feelings and their needs. So in that sense, it's not it's not even that hard. Like I was actually learning NVC while I was babysitting a lot, and I was practicing with those kids all the time, and it was great. They gave me very honest feedback. But the trick with kids is that the need list that I gave to you all is a bit too abstract for them, right? Some of the terms, depending on the age, but you were saying, let me see, pre-K, 6th grade. I don't know exactly what age that is, but if I guess these words are maybe a bit too abstract. So I have a more simplified list of needs that you can guess with kids. And otherwise, you know, kids are just small grown-ups in a way. They're like quite the same as we are. So everything I'm saying about grown-ups, you can actually use for kids. So the way of, you know, guessing needs and guessing their feelings and saying to them, shall we brainstorm together how we can get your need met? That totally works with them. So yeah, let me know if you have a more specific question or concern, maybe of why it might not work. Or one that's saying, when identifying my need and what I want to request from another, I'm struggling with to what extent should I expect others to meet what it is that I need without trade-off or compromise, as oftentimes our needs are the very things in conflict. Wait, let me read that again. Is it that you're worried, Wanda, that someone would do something for you out of obligation and like not really out of like free choice? Just want to see.
Without going into like the example, you know, for time, and is when I express what it is that I need, then it's always a but this is what I need.
So
and, right, so our needs, just what it is that each one of us need, you know, it's just in conflict.
Right.
And so I know we started with the compromise and not compromising, but that's the challenge. And even in just this simple activity, that's the challenge that I had. Okay, how can I make my request without, you know, without being judgmental and saying, I know where this is going to go. You know, they're going to say, but this is what I need. So I was trying not to think at that level, but it's very difficult because, you know, we know the people that we deal with. And
so I have two things to say about that. One is that as long as we experience our needs as clashing, we're not actually on the needs level. So we're actually in our mind still a little bit on the level of strategies. So this is why this is difficult and needs to be practiced, because we're so used to being there that even if we use the need words, sometimes, like for example, you know, I say I have a need for connection, which is a perfectly abstract need word, but secretly I'm actually quite attached to talking with someone. Whereas connection, you know, if I truly embrace it as an abstract thing, it could be in 1,000 ways. It could be doing something together with someone. It could be holding someone's hand. It could be many things. But if we're so scared that our need doesn't get met, we might hold on more to the strategy. So that's one thing, to really look together, maybe even like, are we still, like, what is the concrete thing we actually have in mind when we say our need? Because that's why it still feels like it's clashing. Okay. And the other thing, I
said thank you.
Okay. And the other thing is that when we notice, when it's really like, this is my need, and someone is like, oh, but this is my need, probably you both have a need to be heard, which is tricky, like two people speaking and no one is listening. And so then it's good to really decide consciously who's going to speak first and who's going to listen first. And maybe even, you know, have a bit of a time. I like to do sometimes even a bit of a time frame if you have this experience that someone is just talking and talking about themselves and, you know, doesn't get to you. So you feel like you need to be like, this is my need. So oftentimes you can relax more if you know, okay, right now I'm the listener. It's going to be 5 minutes. and then we switch. And then so these 5 minutes, I can just focus on, what could be their need? What could be the need that we can work with? And so to make sure that when you're both a bit triggered or a bit passionate, like about what you want, and maybe concerned that you won't get heard by the other person, to actually talk about that. Like, hey, I think actually we both really want to be heard. Like, let's make sure that we do that and that we don't go like back and forth and nobody's heard. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. I think a lot of people can relate to that. Michael's saying, one of my big ahas from NVC was noting actual feelings versus pseudo feelings. Right. Yeah. Did you want me to quickly mention what that is, Michael?
Yeah, I found that to be, I think you had even like a video on it. Maybe in like, I know we're like running out of time, but I thought maybe it might be worth noting quickly, and we can direct people to more.
In 2 sentences. Yeah. And people can also look at the video. Yeah, it's indeed a good one, because quite often when we express our feelings, we do that in what's not actually a feeling. I call it a pseudo feeling. So for example, when I say, I feel misunderstood, or I feel abandoned, I feel rejected. In some way those can seem like real experiences in us, but actually there's a thought, not a feeling. So I'm thinking that you are abandoning me. I think that you don't understand me, or I think that you are rejecting me. The feeling, the actual feeling underneath that thought could be like, for example, with I feel rejected. I'm saying I feel rejected. The feeling could be pain or anger, or like I feel misunderstood, or I feel ignored, right? This also, I feel ignored. What could be my feeling? Like maybe I feel sad, or I feel surprised. Maybe it could be different things. But the feelings, the way you know that it's a real feeling, let's say, is that you can tell where it is in the body. Like where I feel ignored, where do I feel that? I don't know, but I feel sad. Oh, actually, yeah, I feel something, tight in my stomach, and I feel, or my shoulders are tense, or so. And the reason that it's important to go to the real feeling is that then it can actually move. You can move through it, because you can feel it in your body, and then it's like, oh, your body's like, oh, they notice the feeling, then we can stop sending that signal. And as long as I think I'm misunderstood, or I feel misunderstood, I stay in my head, and I stay a bit stuck. And also when I express to someone, I feel misunderstood, they're going to get defensive. What do you mean? I totally get you. You're going to get a discussion. Whereas when I say, oh, I have some sadness, they can't deny that, right? That's easier to connect with. So yeah, and I have a video in which I'm giving all the examples of different types of pseudo feelings. If you type pseudo feelings in my channel, Cup of Empathy, you will find that. And someone's asking a PDF of the 4 steps. Yes, I also have that on my website. It's called Tough Talk Preparation Sheet. And that covers the 4 steps as well. So you can just download that for free. And let me see. Yeah, so the slides, I don't know, Michael, if we can still send the slides that I had to people.
Yeah, we'll find a way. I think what we'll do is a lot of the things that we're talking to, we'll compile a list of some of the videos that we referenced of yours, and we'll put them into a post, and we'll share a link to all that information in one area. Yeah,
great. Thank you. Yeah. So it's 9. So anyone, want to be conscious of the time that needs to leave. I think we'll stay for 10, 15 more minutes, right, Michael? For people that still have questions.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Marianne was kind enough to stick around for a little bit extra time, but we also want to be sensitive because we know everyone else has, I'm sure you've got other things to do other than just talk about NVC all day, but I know we'd all love to. So if you need to hop off, feel free to do so now. And for those who want to stick around for another 10 or so minutes, we can kind of like continue with some of the questions we didn't get to, or new ones if anyone has one. But thank you all for joining, for those who have to hop off.
Yeah, thank you all for joining. By the way, if there's people in the background, that is my cleaner coming in. Yeah, so let me just see. So I'll just continue with the questions, Michael. Is that works for you?
Perfect.
Okay. Let me see. Some. I'm just saying thank you. Okay. Is there anyone like who has a question still about, you know, their own example, or anything I was just explaining now or before, or any concerns you have of like, yeah, but does it work in this case? Or I'm happy to answer. Let me see. Or maybe, yeah, I'm curious to hear also what's a situation in which you would love to try to apply this, and maybe I can help with that. Thank you. Thanks everyone for the sweet messages. Meets my need for appreciation.
Marianne, I don't know if other questions come up, we can jump to those also. Oh, I see one coming up, but one thing that I also thought could be interesting to cover is how to make some of those, that if there's tips you have for how to make using NVC or the process itself to make it sound authentic and your own, and not like you're just, I don't know, we're going through a checklist of things to say or do.
Yeah, that's a question a lot of people have. So great. It's a bit advanced also, but you know, let's say something about that. Yeah, because in a way I would recommend to actually first kind of stick a bit to, like, say, classical NVC. So just to learn those 4 steps, even though it might feel a little bit stiff or something. If you try it out with someone to say like, oh, I have a need for this, and then come up with your request, and maybe to, actually, I do have a tip with that, like as long as you are in that phase, to kind of announce it like, hey, not to be hiding that you're trying something new, because people might pick up on your nervousness or your, you know, the stiffness, and then they don't get what you're doing, and then they get a bit resistant to it. So you could just say like, hey, I heard about this communication thing, would you like to try it out with me? I have this card, you know, you just put the need list on the table. And if someone doesn't want to do it, to also honor that, because it is a vulnerable process, you know, we're not always used to share our feelings. So it's in the beginning really about picking the people that you feel safe with to try it out, and that also feel safe with you to do it before you jump to your boss or something, you know, like, or maybe you never know, but depending on what type of boss you have. But yeah. And then, like, once you get this a bit, like once you practice this a bit with people, like sometimes, for example, I hear students use the word need a lot, which makes sense. You know, I have a need for this, I have a need for that. And it can become a bit like sounding needy. So you can also just say, you know, like like instead of saying I have a need for appreciation, I would love some appreciation, or instead of saying I have a need for freedom, you know, I really value freedom. So just to not always use that word need, because I see that a lot with people that are learning NVC. And because there's 4 steps, I mean, we didn't cover them all, but once you're looking at them all and you want to do them all, that can become quite a lengthy expression. And sometimes you don't need all the steps. So you can think like, oh, do I need to include my feeling? Like usually the need and the request are quite important. That's why I covered them today. But oh, does it add something to say my feeling as well? Or will it just become so lengthy that that it feels a bit more unnatural or like a lot? Let me think if there's something else that makes it sound more natural. This is more about the listening part, and we didn't really cover that a lot today, like how to listen empathically to people to find more connection. But I did mention like you can guess needs with people, which is a way to listen to them. Like someone is sharing and they're like, they're upset about something. And, oh, did you actually long for some connection with this person? Or, oh, did you actually long to be heard in this situation? And to make that a bit more natural, like to find that each person has its preferred way to be listened to. Like some people might love that you're guessing needs, and some people might not. So not to be surprised about that and to just follow. You know, most people love if you just listen in silence. Some people get a bit like, she's not saying anything. So that's really like a trial and error as well, like what feels natural with each person. So yeah, I hope that gives a little bit of an idea. But again, the reason I'm calling it more advanced is that asking this of yourself when you're just learning NVC, like first few years, even maybe, I don't know, that's maybe exaggerated, but like first year is a lot. It's a lot to ask. So I want to teach NVC in a way that also promotes the self-compassion, you know. So the way we learn things is often also with a lot of self-judgment. So if you can just, if you can start small, I would just recommend doing the self-connection. So having the need list, the feelings and needs, sitting down once a day, 5 minutes, and just thinking of one situation and connecting with yourself. If you can do that, that's how you build it for yourself. And then you can start doing it with others slowly when you feel comfortable. So also not to ask too much of yourself is, I think it's important. Are there any other questions? Yeah, I see some questions. How to help in relationships where there may be a lot of resentment? Yeah. So yeah, if there's a lot of resentment already, I guess the first question is like, what has built this resentment? So to kind of like see if the other person is open to have a talk about it and to say like, hey, I think we might both, like, I'm noticing that I have some feelings of resentment, and I'm guessing maybe you do too. Would you like to have a talk about that? I don't know what's the relationship, if you would feel comfortable to do that, but, and then to see like, is it about doing compromises? Like, is it about we're both doing things that we don't truly want? Or is it about that one of us did something that was very hurtful, like broke our trust or something? I think those are maybe two different things that could give resentment. And then to see like, how can we change this with like small steps? So say that it is about doing compromises, doing things out of obligation. If you're both convinced like that's not a good idea, you know, it's important, I think, that you're both in it. And then maybe to identify like, what are the small situations where we both do something that we don't want? Like, for example, if it's your partner, like, I tend to always go with you to my parents-in-law, to your parents, but sometimes I'm just exhausted and maybe I want to be more honest about that. And then you can start exploring like, oh, how could you navigate that situation? But just to start with maybe one or two typical recurring things where there's resentment, where there's obligation. And if there's a really big event, like maybe someone cheated, or, you know, someone, I don't know, was hiding something very big and that was discovered, I would usually recommend asking a third party, like really having like a mediator, because it's hard. You can try, of course, dealing with it yourself, but it's hard to really navigate that on your own. So yeah, that's what I would say. Let me know, Rachel, if that answered your question. Annika, how to get arguments that you've had many times unstuck when the other person doesn't want to talk about it again? That's very tricky, right? If the other person doesn't want to talk. So I see two things. One is that sometimes people say they don't want to talk about it. And what it means is that I don't want to talk about it in the way that we always talk about things. There's something about the way that we always talk about things that I feel judged, which is a pseudo feeling, right? But I feel there's pain in me because I think you're judging me. So I'm out, you know? So making some guesses, what makes someone not want to talk? And don't say, why don't you want to talk? Because it sounds like you're judging them. Often when we say why, it sounds like, why the hell, right? But what we mean is like, you know, what is it in how we talked so far that was unpleasant for you? So you can find out what it is that that makes them not want to talk. In the end, of course, you want to respect also if they really don't want to talk. But I always feel like that one guess, to make that before you honor that they don't want to talk is helpful, because 9 out of 10 times they're also, you know, don't like the situation as it is right now. And they might not have access themselves really to what it is that they don't want to talk and how could it be changed. But yeah, once you know, you can find again the needs and the strategies to talk about it in a different way. And yeah, that's of course not something that you learn overnight, but yeah, that is the first thing I would do. And then, you know, there could be many reasons why people can't talk with someone and still that they want to resolve something. So what I do, and you can do that in a session with someone or with a friend, to play out the conversation with someone that is a different person, but you can like express everything, like any type of pain or discomfort or judgment, anything that you have, to your listening friend, and they will pretend they are the other person, but with a lot of empathy. So they will just listen to you and just try to understand you. And that way something can heal in you that will either be enough if they never want to talk to you again, you know, sometimes that, or maybe they passed away, right? And you want to resolve something still. That's one way how you can do that. Or it might create a lot more space in you to approach the person that doesn't want to talk, because you've already kind of like gotten out the first layers. So yeah, let me know if that answers, Annika. So I'll do the last question. Caleb, how well does this work with work associates and or acquaintances where the trust and or patience to communicate in this way might not be there? Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, it's one of my, in my program, it's one of my modules. I have one course or program, whatever you want to call it. And it is a little bit more difficult because in the workplace, there's, you know, this is all about vulnerability in the end. So depending on where you work, it's sometimes less accepted. So one thing I can recommend is to leave out the feelings and just go for the need and request and the observation. Because those are a little bit less vulnerable. So people might not really know how to, you know, receive your feelings, or might be like, oh, we're getting very personal all of a sudden. That might be uncomfortable, but just to say, you know, I need some clarity. Could you explain to me how this needs to be done? That's a very, you know, safe way to speak. And so, yeah, there's a lot of, actually, my colleague, Kara Chrysler, she has done this a lot in companies to actually train, you know, managers, but also just any employee to be able to speak this way and to resolve conflicts and have more ease in the communication. So it works very well in the workspace. Yeah. So thank you. These were such great questions. Oh my God, thank you so much. I'm gonna hand it over, I guess, to Michael, because we are.
Thank you so much for being so generous with your time and literally answering every last question. Thank you. This was such an amazing session. I think we'd love to keep you close in the Holstee sphere, Marianne, because this is just, I think, a very powerful session for all of us. And thank you for all the folks coming from the Cup of Empathy universe as well. I know there's a lot of alignment between the types of things that we're talking about. So felt really nice to kind of combine forces here. We're going, like we mentioned, we're going to be sharing all the resources and some of the links to videos and topics. We're going to pull that information together, and you should see that over the hopefully next few days. And once the video is ready, we'll also make sure to post that. If you RSVP'd, yes, which you probably did if you're here, you'll get a link to all that information, and we'll post it very clearly in the community as well.